What's going on, YouTube? Today I bring you my Week 2 power rankings for the 2021 NFL season. It was an insane week with a bunch of upsets. A bunch of good teams played bad and a bunch of bad teams played good. So there have been some massive shakeups in my power rankings. There was no Week 1 power rankings because my analysis videos were basically my way of power ranking the teams. But heading into our trash category, I literally have a trash can there. At number 32 is the Jaguars. Originally, it was the Texans here, and when you lose to the Texans, and not only lose, but lose in bad fashion to the Texans, to me, the Jaguars are pretty easily the worst team in the NFL right now, and that does have to put them here at number 32, dropping 5 spots. Honestly, I thought we might have been able to see something good out of them. I predicted them to beat the Texans, but they looked horrible. Urban Meyer did not look like an NFL coach. Trevor Lawrence was just kind of thrown to the wolves and showed those flashes. I'm still not concerned with Trevor Lawrence. He will still be a good quarterback, but they definitely threw him to the wolves there, and it showed. Just in all, the team is so inexperienced, even on the coaching staff, and their best players just did not play good. To me, the Jaguars are easily the worst team in the NFL right now. And right above them, moving up one spot, is the Texans. Still going to be horrible, in my opinion. But they did beat the Jaguars, which at least, doesn't mean that they're going to be last. Experience triumphed over inexperience. That's pretty much why they won at the end of the day. At least they have a coach that somewhat knows what he's doing. They just don't have a bunch of rookies everywhere. I think they might even be the oldest team in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, moving up one spot, not much here. You beat the Jaguars, which again, as we just covered, are the worst team. But it's still not much. But at least you're not dead last if you're the Texans. And then the last team in our trash category, the Lions moving up one spot, mostly because the Jaguars fell. But, they almost did complete a comeback, which would have been very, very impressive. I mean, beating the 49ers in general would have been super impressive, but especially if it was like all in one quarter, like a comeback with like 30 points, the Lions would have definitely moved up here more than one spot. But being that they still lost, they didn't complete the comeback. Most of it was done in garbage time. They still looked like a garbage team. They're still down here in the trash category and only moved up one spot. They are still at number 30 though. And then moving on to our trash question mark tier. These are the teams that I would straight up call like trash teams, like the Texans or the Jaguars, but they're definitely close to that area. I was not very high on the Falcons coming into this year. I thought, that maybe they'd show a bit of promise. I expected their offense to at least be a little bit better than that, but God, either the Eagles are a really good team or the Falcons are a really, really bad team. I don't want to quite put them in that trash tier yet. That's why they're in the question mark trash tier, because that offense still has a lot of upside. Matt Ryan played unreasonably bad, and the defense should still be horrible, but, even some of their better defensive guys did not play good. I think they're a much better team than getting beat 32-6 by the Eagles. So that's why I can't put them quite in that tier yet. But if you have another loss like that, I mean, they're going to go into that tier. They were bad, so they dropped down a spot. Jets dropping down 6 spots here to 28. I was a big believer in that the Jets could be a bit of a surprise team. I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs or anything, but, I at least thought they could show some promise, but they looked still pretty bad against the Panthers. They made it a close game at least, which, shows for something maybe, but Zach Wilson was good. He just wasn't really able to get them to any, game-winning plays, really. I mean, he got him a couple touchdowns, but that was pretty much all they could do. Corey Davis looked great. The running game is going to be an issue. The offensive line is going to be an issue, especially with Becton out. They were great in pass rush efficiency, but they just didn't do anything. Like, it didn't lead to any big plays or anything that really gave them that, advantage to win the game in the end. The secondary is still pretty bad. I mean, Marcus May doesn't quite look like he did last year. And Robert Saleh was just kind of pretty disappointing in his debut as a coach. So you put that all together, and the Jets were just pretty disappointing week 1, and I don't know how much better that's going to get against the Patriots in week 2. in all, they're going to drop down 6 spots here into the question mark tier because again, I don't think like you can call them quite like trash like that just yet, but they're nearing that category with another loss like that. Bears at 27, dropping down a spot. Some people are saying like, oh, well, they played well considering it was the Rams. No, they didn't. I mean, they did not play good. They got dominated. The Rams are a good team, but the Bears simply are not. Andy Dalton's not the guy, and I'm not a believer in Justin Fields. I actually believe in letting him develop and sit for a little bit. So the whole idea of like let's throw Justin Fields in, there's no point. To me, just feels like you're just gonna ruin a quarterback's development for no reason, and that would be stupid. So at least Matt Nagy's doing that correctly. Otherwise, I don't trust Matt Nagy as this team's coach. I think he'll be fired after this year. The defense was not very good considering they have Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, some nice players, but the secondary is a big issue. I was hoping maybe Eddie Jackson would have a big rebound year, and he didn't show it week 1. Yeah, I mean, David Montgomery looked great. That was about all the Bears had going for them this week against the Rams. Maybe they rebound. I'm pretty sure they're playing. Who are they playing this week? Are there Bears? Yeah, hold on, let me look really quick at who the Bears are playing. But regardless, yeah, they just didn't have much going for them. And so they do drop down a spot here to 27. They are playing the Bengals this week, which they're the favorites in that game. And we'll go over that prediction for that game, but I don't necessarily think that they should be favorites in that game. And then last in our question mark trash tier is the Giants. They did not look good against the Broncos. The offense I can understand. I mean, Daniel Jones, not the best quarterback in the league. They have some great weapons, but that Denver defense is just super good. So Saquon, not looking fully healthy. The receivers looking great. Saquon's still showing a bit of upside at this point. Hopefully he can get over his injury soon. Right, you got stuff there. Daniel Jones was obviously an issue, but maybe if you want to chalk that up to the Denver defense just being the Denver defense, then I mean, cool, whatever. There's not much of an excuse for how the defense played. I mean, this is supposed to be one of the better defenses in the NFL. I was kind of on the side of I thought it was a bit overrated. I didn't think their secondary was as good as everyone thought, and Leonard Williams was great last year, but could he keep it up this year? The Giants' defense didn't show anything. Unless the Broncos truly are like a top 15 offensive unit this year with Teddy Bridgewater, there's absolutely no excuse why you should be letting Bridgewater play like that against you, letting Melvin Gordon break off for like a 70-yard touchdown. The Giants just couldn't stop anything on either end this week. And again, unless the Broncos are just that good, and they also moved up quite a bit in the power rankings this week, unless you're just that good, there was no excuse for the Giants to be this bad week 1. And so they dropped 3 spots into the question mark trash tier. Then into the question mark tier. And this is for teams, that just kind of, I mean, is for some of these teams, was it just a week 1 thing? Are we going to see more of this for you? Starting off the tier, I have the Panthers. A win is a win, but you could have looked a lot better than that against the Jets of all teams. I was not very high on the Panthers coming into this year. I love their team. There's a lot of teams in the NFL where it's just if they had that quarterback, I think they'd be a playoff team. And I never thought Sam Darnold was the guy. He played fine, and it led to a win, but against not a very good Jets team with arguably one of the worst secondaries in the NFL, the fact that Sam Darnold was like okay against them, to me, is just not very hopeful looking for the Panthers. So there's still a great chance. I mean, Christian McCaffrey looked great in his return. The defense was a little shaky for what's supposed to be one of the better units. To me, they're just a bit of a question mark right now, and I have them at 25. With the Bengals, really it's more about, okay, now do it again for me. Joe Burrow looked great. Jamar Chase looked great. The offensive line did not look good. They let up 5 sacks. For reference, Joe Burrow was sacked 32 times in 10 games last year. That's 3.2 sacks per game. And just in week 1 against the Vikings, who, Danielle Hunter's great, but really that, you should not be letting up 5 sacks to them. To me, again, I just feel like, Penei Sewell would have been the better pick. But, a win's a win. Vikings were very sloppy, so you got to take that into account. The defense has definitely played better than I thought they would, which is a good sign. They got to win week 1. I mean, really, that's all that matters for right now. If they do it again, they will move up. But for right now, it's kind of, again, show me again. I need some more confirmation that the Bengals are a good team. I did have a lot of hope for them. Didn't know if they'd reach it, but we'll see with the Bengals. Then a big jump up team this week. Eagles moving up 7 spots into the question mark tier, and I was not high on the Eagles. Like I was never high on the Eagles. This is a talent, a roster filled with talent, but I thought there were things that would hold them back. The receiving room to me was still very lackluster. I wasn't a fan of Jalen Hurts. I didn't think the Eagles were even a fan of Jalen Hurts. The defense had holes on it. I didn't like Nick Sirianni as coach, right? There was a lot of question marks for me, and I just felt like it was a team that wasn't going to do well this year. And then they went out there and they dismantled the Falcons, and it was a big surprise. Like I wasn't opposed to the idea of them winning the game, but I would have never imagined that they beat the Falcons that badly. So with the Eagles, like I at least feel like there is something there. Jalen Hurts looked very good now again against a very bad Falcons defense, but he did look good, and so did Devontae Smith and a lot of other members of this team. Jordan Mailata, I made fun of his extension. If he can play like that every week, he is well worth that extension. So it's just if the Eagles keep this up, they will keep moving up and be one of the better teams this year. And I do believe that can happen because they really did show some really nice things against the Falcons, and just a lot of the issues I had were not issues, and so um, again, question mark tier, do it again, but they did move up. And then at 22, the Raiders with perhaps the upset of the week for me. Not the upset of the week. There was a lot of those, but it was, obviously one of the upsets of the week. Raiders beating the Ravens, moving up 7 spots as well. Raiders, again, not a team I was very high on. I did not like the Raiders coming into this year. I thought the offensive line would be an issue. Um, the defense still definitely had holes. I think some of the players were a little bit overhyped with the signings of like Ngakwe and Hayward. There were certain aspects to that, and then they just played good. Now, again, similar to the Eagles, with a grain of salt, they're still in the question mark tier because the Ravens team was highly disappointing. They looked so just non-caring about whether they won and stuff. I mean, there were 2 touchdowns where Marlon Humphrey just kind of gave up on the play, and that's why it resulted in a touchdown. And I mean, if the Ravens just show a little bit more effort and stuff, I don't think they lose that game. And so while the Raiders did play great, I mean, Josh Jacobs looked great. The offensive line was not as bad as I thought. Alex Leatherwood is looking good. Ngakwe was good until he went out. Max Crosby had 13 pressures, and so that whole Cleveland Farrell is better than Max Crosby group should probably shut up about right now. The Raiders were just good. Again, I think grain of salt, they're still in the question mark tier, but they did look good against one of the better teams in the NFL, and so they move up 7 spots, and they're here at 22. 21, I have the Dolphins, and this is the tier where it's like, what happened? Like, truly, just what happened this week? And kicking that off with the Dolphins, they only drop 1 spot, but they looked bad. Again, another team that I was not a fan of this year coming into it. I did not like Tua. I thought the defense wouldn't be as good. I wasn't the biggest fan of some of their additions, and yeah, I mean, Tua looked like what I thought he would be. The defense was good, but not as good as last year, and there just were a lot of parts of this team that were not working. Now they got the win, but it was far from a pretty one. And the Patriots themselves, which you see down there at 19, in their own rights, did not play well. But yeah, I mean, pretty astonishing that the Dolphins were able to pull out this win because they played pretty badly. And so they're going to need to show me a lot for them to be moving up. Still a talented team, but they're going to need to show me some stuff. Colts at 20. I mean, they got handled by the Seahawks, which is kind of what I expected. Wentz, he played okay, similar to, with Sam Darnold. Like, he played okay against one of the worst defenses in the NFL, which is not very heartening when it does have to play a good defense. So, take that as you will. Receivers were not good. Cornerbacks were not good. Offensive line looked decent. Braden Smith kind of got destroyed on a few different occasions. Defense was good. I mean, it somewhat kept them in the game but for the most part, they pretty much, they lost the way I thought they would, and I think my validation of the Colts not being as good as people maybe thought, because I just don't think Carson Wentz is the guy. There's a lot of other issues to where I just don't think the Colts are gonna be that good, and they dropped 4 spots because of that. Patriots 19. They just didn't look good. I mean, at least Mac Jones looked good, which is a good sign. The Patriots and Bill Belichick never start out hot, so I'm not super worried. But at the same time, like the team did play pretty poorly and still lost to the Dolphins, who played horribly in their own rights. Like again, the silver lining here is that Mac Jones played good. The Patriots never start out hot, but for right now, it's still kind of you should have at least still won that game in Foxborough. Like I don't know what happened, but it happened. And then at 18, Washington football team. Um, they just, yeah, they disappointed me. I mean, their defense got, eliminated by the Chargers offensive line. Chase Young was a non-factor. Most of the D line was a non-factor. On offense, they were struggling to really get anything going under Fitzpatrick, and they finally started to get something going under Heineke. Their secondary was not doing very good because Herbert was kind of throwing all over them. There was just a lot of stuff here to where I had very high hopes for Washington, but with the way they looked, and I mean the Chargers are a good team, but with the way they looked, not super good for them, so they do drop down 6 spots. And then our next tier is like it's what happened, but like for the good teams. And it's a bit more of like I think these teams will end up being fine, but like for the time being, what happened? I mean, you want to talk about the Vikings? They looked sloppy. They pretty much forgot they had a passing game up until they remembered out of nowhere. Yeah, they just weren't good. They lost to the Bengals, and be it, I think they should have won. I do think that shouldn't have been a fumble, but regardless, you put yourself in that situation anyways. And again, I think they'll be fine going forward. They still got one of the best defenses, in my opinion, one of the best offenses. Like, I mean, the offensive line was horrible, but they also didn't have Wyatt Davis starting, and they didn't have Darisaw. Period. I think honestly, at the end of the day, the big issue is Mike Zimmer. I don't trust him as a play caller at this point. And sure, he's a good defensive mind, but like he's just not getting the job done. Otherwise, the Vikings, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll probably still end up making the playoffs. I do still love them, but they did drop a fair amount because like they're in the tier. What happened? And then looking at the Titans here at number 16, yeah, they got destroyed by the Cardinals, absolutely destroyed. They were just not working on any cylinders. Derrick Henry was held to basically the minimum of what you're going to get from Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill had a bad game. Julio Jones did nothing, and now there's a bit of drama going on with him and the team. A.J. Brown looked okay. The offensive line was pretty bad, especially Taylor Lewan, who had one of the worst outings I've ever seen at one position on the line. The defense did not look anything close to good against the Cardinals. I thought maybe they'd be at least a little bit improved on defense, and I thought their offense would be great, but yeah, they got destroyed by the Cardinals. There's not much else to it. Again, I feel like they'll be fine. They will get going, but they just were absolutely destroyed week 1. At 15, the Ravens losing to the Raiders was pretty embarrassing, especially with the way that they lost, just looking so extremely sloppy, like they don't want to win, like they just weren't trying, especially players like Marlon Humphrey. Lamar fumbled like twice, one of which was in overtime. They had opportunities. They had chances. They were scoring. They just let up a lot of easy scores where they just looked like they weren't trying. And so the Ravens would have won that game if they just would have put in actual effort. But for the time being, they're dropping because they just put in such a poor effort that, I mean, they're dropping down to 15 for right now. Again, I feel like they'll be fine, but it's just like, what was that? And then the Packers, I mean, God dang, what happened? Like, Aaron Rodgers was so bad that he got pulled for Jordan Love. Like, how are you going to sit there and cause all this drama this entire offseason and then look like that? Aaron Jones had 9 yards. The defense was not good. I mean, the Saints offense just completely ran over them. I mean, Jameis Winston had 5 touchdowns, 0 picks, 140 quarterback rating. Like, the Saints looked like the best team of all time against the Packers, and the Packers looked like they looked horrible. Like, straight up, like, just, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, 38-3. I think the Packers will be fine. The Saints have a really good defense, and I'm sure they surprised a lot of people, including myself, of just how good Jameis Winston worked with Sean Payton to make that offense hum. I think there's rust there for sure for Rodgers. but they're going to get things going. And I expect to even be as soon as this week where they blow out the Lions on Monday Night Football. If the Packers look like they're struggling against the Lions, there is a real issue here. And they're going to need to look like deep inside themselves to figure out what's going on, because that would just be so embarrassing. And that was still an embarrassing loss. It's still at 14, but like that was embarrassing for the Packers. And then in my more tier, these are the teams that like either played well but didn't get the win, or teams that played very well and got the win. And I just want to see more from them. With the Bills dropping down here to number 13, losing to the Steelers was a surprise for sure, but it's just, I think part of it was just that the Steelers pass rush was that good, and we'll get to them in a second. But, Josh Allen, he was still good. They struggled to get to those game-winning drives and stuff, but Josh Allen still looked good. The defense still did look good at times as well. I think, it's just a case of the Steelers being really good, probably did not expect that pass rush to be that elite. And again, I think they'll shake it off. They played good, just not good enough, and I just want to see more from them going forward. Obviously, still dropping down a decent amount of spots because they did lose. Then the Broncos at number 12, moving up 6 spots. They were fantastic week 1. We talked about how they, really just handled the Giants. And, the defense was looking, top 5, maybe even number 1. The offense was humming with Melvin Gordon, Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, they targeted, Cortland Sutton, I think, like 3 times. Jerry Jeudy was out for like half the game, so they really didn't even have the 2 of their top 3 offensive options, and they still just handled the Giants. And so the Broncos were very impressive. Going to play the Jaguars this week, I mean, they might move up even more because they looked like a great team, and they're probably going to look like it again next week. Then the Steelers with a big jump here of 8 spots at getting up here to number 11. I mean, the offense looked okay, right? Like, Najee looked good. The offensive lines definitely played better than I thought. Big Ben's looked decent enough to where his receivers are able to score and stuff. The big surprise, and it's weird saying this as a surprise, but they beat the Bills with that pass rush. This is, I've already said it now, and maybe it's a bit of a hot take, but I think when this Steelers team rushes 4, it might be the scariest defense ever made. I mean, Joe Hayden is not the best corner in the NFL, but he is still decent. Minka, one of the better safeties in the NFL. You got some good linebackers there with Schobert and Devin Bush, but when you're rushing Stephon Tuitt, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, and Melvin Ingram at the same time, that very well could be the scariest pass rush ever assembled. And they won the game because of it. If you're not going to win every single game like that, I still think there is a bit of a limitation. I don't think the Steelers can win a Super Bowl with that, but that is still extremely scary. They beat a great team like the Bills with it, and they can, pull that off. So with the Steelers, I mean, if you're able to do it, cool, you're going to get wins. But for right now, they moved up a bunch because of that win. But, we'll see if they can do it again. Again, they're in the more tier, but we'll see. And then the Cowboys with one of the biggest jumps of the week, moving up 11 spots. The Cowboys, although they didn't get the win, they looked great. Now, I just did see something that DeMarcus Lawrence has something with a foot injury, so hopefully that's not too bad. Update, there is news that DeMarcus Lawrence is out for at least until November, so that is not good for the Cowboys. That would definitely move them down at this point because he's their most important defensive player, and their defense was still pretty poor. He was like their one bright spot besides Micah Parsons, and him being out for a while now is not good for them, so they would probably move down to more like 13 or 12, but continued. The offense looked great. Dak Prescott was amazing. The receivers were great. The line was great against the Buccaneers. One of the scarier defenses, especially considering they didn't have Zach Martin. Zeke still looked good, but he just really didn't get going all that much. They didn't use him. For me, there are still a few issues. They would have won the game if their kicker could actually kick, and if the coaching was just a little bit better. The play calling still a bit of a question to me, but the Cowboys are going to win themselves a good amount of games this year. For certain, more than last year. Their defense is better, but, is it that much better? We'll see. But, the Cowboys still had one of the best performances from a losing team, arguably the best performance from a losing team week 1, so they move up here to number 10. And then in the more with a question mark tier, I want to see more from these teams because I think they can be something special, but we'll have to see. Starting off with the Chargers at number 9, they didn't win that convincingly against Washington, but really the big reason they're up here is because they still looked pretty good. And there's a lot of reasons to be very happy right now. Brandon Staley looked good in his debut. The offensive line was actually the best in football. Rashawn Slater was amazing against Chase Young. I don't know what it is with him and Chase Young, but he just shuts him down. And Rashawn Slater looked great. The whole offensive line did. Herbert was looking great again. His receivers were making plays. The defense was good. Washington doesn't have one of the better offenses or anything, but they still looked good. And I think when you put that all together, I don't even think they're really at their peak yet. I mean, obviously, Justin Herbert's barely in his second year, and so many other things to where this Chargers team could be even better this year. And so I definitely want to see more from them. They move up 4 spots to number 9 here. 49ers moving up to number 8, moving up 2 spots. They were winning very dominantly until the Lions kind of started to make that comeback there at the end. Now, at the end of the day, I think it was garbage time. They kind of settled down, and then, as momentum started building for the Lions, they almost let it happen. If they did let the comeback happen, this would be a much very different story. But for the time being, they were dominant all game. Losing Raheem Mostert and Jason Verrett is an issue. But I think when you have one of the better pass rushes and better defensive lines in the NFL that softens the blow a bit of losing Verrett for however long it is. And Mostert, they have a deep running back room, and, their passing game looked very dangerous with a 2-quarterback system. We'll see how that works out for them. For right now, they're at number 8, but again, they can be a scary team. I just want to see more from them. And the Saints with another large leap here from a team at number 7. I just simply didn't think the Saints could be this good with Jameis Winston, but Sean Payton, on offensive genius, just found out how to use him, and he had a great week. The defense looks scary. This Saints team is going to be pretty scary this year if they can keep up that play, and if Winston can keep up that play. If Winston keeps up that play, he's an MVP candidate. So, the Saints, they could be a scary team, maybe even scarier than when they were with Breeze. So good thing that they figured that out. They move up 10 spots here after a dominant win over the Packers, a good team. Seahawks at 6, they also take a big leap up here, 8 spots. Yeah, they just played great. I think Russell Wilson looked dominant as per normal at the start of the season. Metcalf started off slow, but then got going. Tyler Lockett had a great performance. The offensive line did look better. Against a pretty good Colts defense. Their offense looked great, and their defense still not great or anything, but I think it will be a little bit improved in some ways. And there are a couple guys I could see breaking out. Darrell Taylor and Jordan Brooks have both looked nice. All in all, they had a dominant win over the Colts. Their offense was absolutely dominant. Can they keep it up for more than 5 to 9 weeks? We'll see. But for right now, they are going to be here at number 6. And then moving on to the last tier, the Super Bowl tier. These are the teams that I believe are the 5 ones in competition for the Lombardi Trophy right now. Starting at number 5, the Cardinals. They looked amazing. I had my doubts about whether Cliff Kingsbury was the guy. Was Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt past their prime? Was cornerback going to be an issue? Could Kyler Murray take that next step? Do they have a running back? All of those issues got answered because Kyler Murray looked like he took that next step into the MVP conversation. James Conner looked good as their running back. DeAndre Hopkins looked like his normal self. Chandler Jones put up one of the best defensive performances I've ever seen. J.J. Watt looked great as well. Byron Murphy played great, shut down Julio Jones and A.J. Brown for the most part of the game. All of the issues that I had with the Cardinals literally got wiped away. I started to get a little bit lower on them as time went on, but they showed me why I never should have gotten lower. And they move up only 4 spots here, but they're moving into that top tier and number 5 spot overall. They can keep that up. They have a legit shot to win it all this year. Then the Browns at number 4, they drop a spot here, but really I think that just goes to show, that the Rams were the team I thought they would be. They looked great still against the Chiefs. They can also definitely win a Super Bowl. They are very talented, deep, great roster team that, I don't know if they can necessarily quite overcome the teams like the Buccaneers or the Chiefs this year, but they are still a great team and have a bright future ahead of them. So they lost, they drop a spot, but still great, still a Super Bowl contender. At number 3, the Rams move up a couple spots here because they looked great. I thought they would be great, and Matthew Stafford looked like an MVP candidate, kind of called that. Their offense looked amazing. Their defense looked dominant as per usual. Yeah, it was the Bears, but I mean, they did what they needed to do. They dominated the Bears, and the Rams are a legit scary threat and will be competing for a Super Bowl this year, and so that's why they move up 2 spots to number 3. At number 2, the Buccaneers do drop down to 1 just because they did let it be a pretty close game with something that really shouldn't have been a close game. They were sloppy. There's no way around that. They were sloppy. They committed turnovers. They committed penalties. But the fact that they still won against one of the NFL's elite offenses with the amount of penalties and turnovers that they did, to me, just goes to show how scary and elite the team really is. They are experienced, just fix up that sloppiness, and they're for sure, almost guaranteeing themselves back a spot in the Super Bowl because they are a good team. They just need to clean themselves up. I think because of that sloppiness and, how close they did let it get, I think they do drop down here to number 2. Still a great elite team. And then at number 1, I mean, maybe I should have just had them number 1 anyways, but they move up a spot and take number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs. They were losing to the Browns, but then they kind of did their Chiefs thing, that they've done so many times now where down 2 scores, they come back and they win the game. And, the Browns look great, but the Chiefs just look better. Mahomes looked like Mahomes. Tyreek Hill had 170 yards. No one's even talking about it. Travis Kelce was great, Travis Kelce was great. Offensive line is a bit of an issue. I mean, you have 2 rookies starting. Orlando Brown didn't look very good against Myles Garrett. The defense, is still got a few issues at times with it. But at the end of the day, Chiefs are still one of the most scary offenses ever assembled. Still an elite team that, they're experienced. They've got a great coach. They don't commit all the penalties and sloppiness that the Buccaneers do. I titled this season Mahomes Revenge, and week 1 against one of the best teams in the NFL, they looked great, came back to win, and for me, that's enough to give them the number 1 spot for right now. But that is going to conclude my week 2 power rankings for the 2021 NFL season. If you guys like the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Tomorrow we're doing our week 2 picks, then we got a mock draft coming after that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.